Psycho-Pictography, the new way to use the miracle power of your mind, by Vernon. Chapter 3. How to face and overcome life's crises. A man doesn't live his particular kind of life because he likes it. He lives as he does because he thinks there is nothing better. Pause and consider this idea. A tremendous clue to lofty living is hidden within. The purpose of psychopictography is to show you how to make a grand reversal. Instead of thinking there is nothing better, you will actually live in that superior state. Making accurate decisions. Let's start with the inquiry, will you please clarify the state of an unhappy person? Tell us about the inner conditions that keep us running from one painful crisis to the next. The inner state of a troubled person can be described in many ways, but they all mean the same thing. Here are a few. He possesses inner contradictions that he can neither endure nor escape. He has lost touch with his true self. He fails to see that the torture of himself is by himself. He wanders from one false trail to another. He walks in nightmarish sleep. A woman in my audience smiled. That describes me exactly, she said. Can you also summarize the way out of this nightmare? Could we have some short and meaningful points? Honestly face your inner contradictions. Don't pretend they don't exist. Have the courage to strike out in the new direction whispered by your true self. Dare to take your own life into your own hands. Stop conforming. Don't let inner pressures goad you into unwise decisions. Dare to abandon your rigid ways of thinking. Walk forward with the simple truth that the good life awaits you. Let's take one of the above ideas for special study. It has secret power for preventing a personal crisis. Don't let inner pressures goad you into unwise decisions. Let's suppose that you come to a fork in your mental road where you must make a decision. You must never decide in a way that merely lifts the pressure of indecision. This is the unfortunate choice that many people make. They are interested only in immediate relief, not final accuracy. But you must not do this. A decision based on relief alone is almost always against your best interests. It not only fails to settle the immediate crisis, but tends to create more problems. It pyramids the original crisis. It also causes regret, as reported by one woman. I used to buy my clothes impulsively just to get them out of my mind. The minute I got home, I regretted my choice. Now I'm wiser. If I don't really know what I want, I buy nothing. Be aware that indecision is a pressure. Don't make a decision merely to relieve that pressure. Be wise. Wait. Be calm. Think. Don't rush impulsively to get it done. Don't race for the nearest answer. Let the right answer come to you. It will. How to know all the answers. Someone asked, please give us an example of unclear thinking toward a course of action. Thinking that a new course of action is better when it is only different. That is like deciding that it is better to jump into a swamp than into a bog. The wise man jumps into neither. Your inner self, your true self, knows all the answers. It never makes a mistake. This is an absolute fact, whether you realize it or not. It is good to realize it. Find this all-wise true self and you will never again face a decision crisis. Not only that, but what pleasure you have in your own company. Here is how Dr. Erich Fromm explains the process. Only those qualities that result from our spontaneous activity give strength to the self and thereby form the basis of its integrity. The inability to act spontaneously, to express what one genuinely feels and thinks, and the resulting necessity to present a pseudo-self to others and oneself are the root of the feeling of inferiority and weakness. Whether or not we are aware of it, there is nothing of which we are more ashamed than of not being ourselves, and there is nothing that gives us greater pride and happiness than to think, to feel, and to say what is ours. Don't be your usual, habitual, repetitious thoughts. Be yourself. There is, a great difference in the two. As you know, an earthquake occurs whenever a fault in the earth shifts suddenly. The sliding of an unsettled section beneath the surface jolts everything above. An earthquake is caused by a false foundation. That is similar to what happens when a human being gets jolted by a personal crisis. The subconscious areas of the mind rest on a faulty foundation, so any sudden crisis causes upheaval. It jolts the man into damaging behaviour, including nervousness and distress. Happily, there is a major difference between a physical earthquake and a psychological one. The human earthquake has a sure cure. The fault can be removed. A man need not live in fear of periodic disturbance. He can be settled upon the foundation of psychological reality. I want to give you a superb example of this. It relates to the question of personal morality. No other crisis causes so much painful anxiety and useless guilt. The question came up, I'm confused about morality. What exactly is right and what is wrong? I have a strong urge to break away from my habitual life. What about this urge? Is it immoral? Why don't you go ahead and break away? Why not live the way you really want to? I'd like to, but would you like to hear why you don't? Several people called yes. You have a false sense of morality. Society has imposed upon you its hypocritical standards of conduct, which you fearfully take as true. This makes you feel guilty, anxious, afraid. Society sets up an ideal, like a tall stone statue, then tells you to look like that. But you can't maintain your inner integrity and look like that. The statue is idealistic nonsense. Then, when you fail to hold that statue-like poise, you feel guilty and resentful. All statues are evasions of genuine morality. They are illusions. No one can live up to an illusion. Don't fall for demands to be unselfish. Another hypocritical morality is when other people press upon you a false sense of duty. They tell you what you owe them. Think they tell you what you owe them. Don't fall for it. The simple truth is that they want something from you, though they call it by a noble name. You owe them nothing. Your first duty is toward yourself, your inner freedom. That is the same as saying that your first duty is toward the truth. A woman asked, "This is off the point somewhat, but what attitude should we have toward people who planted those false ideas in our mind, who used us for their own selfish purposes?" Simply see that they are asleep. Someone misinformed them, just as they misinformed you, so there is no one to blame. But once you see that you were fed false ideas, it is your heroic responsibility to smash the painful pattern. Don't pass it on to your children, if you really love them. Then what is genuine morality? How should we behave? Never do anything that harms either yourself or another person. This idea is deeper than you think. Unawakened people don't realize the harm that goes on. A man must wake up. Then he is happy at last. How to make your life trouble-free. Raise your level of thinking. Uplift your viewpoints. Climb the ladder of self-understanding. Ascend to a higher state of awareness. Glimpse the loftier world. That is what we have been covering together time and time again throughout these pages. Why? Why all this emphasis on lifting yourself rather than working on surrounding circumstances? Because you make your circumstances whatever they are. You live in both a material and a psychological world of your own creation. This means that you can create a new world for yourself that is free from crisis and difficulty. You can move up to a trouble-free level. You really can. We have the perfect illustration. The citizens of a village in a deep valley were troubled. Floods regularly swept down the valley to carry away their homes and livestock. Great boulders from the mountain slopes thudded into their streets and yards. Their children stumbled into the marshes. It was a hard life, but the only one they knew. But one day a man with insight came to town. He told them, the problem is not the floods and boulders and marshes. The problem is you. You are unnecessarily living on a low level. An unnecessary low level, they echoed. Yes, try to understand. Your low level involves you in one crisis after another. As long as you dwell down here, you'll have trouble. Raise yourself. Problems will cease to happen. Show us how, they pleaded. So the man with insight showed them how to build homes above the valley and on the mountain slopes. Some built new homes a short way above the level of the valley. Others, more wise, built new homes far up the mountainside. Now, said the man with insight, you will experience the trouble-free life. By moving your residence, you have removed the problems. Yes, someone remarked. How clear it now is. I wonder, someone else added, why we didn't see it before. Remember that story. It points the way to freedom from difficulties of every kind. There is no crisis in your life that a higher level of thinking cannot cure. Prove it for yourself. How to know what you want. What, I asked the meeting one night, is your single greatest problem? The answers came. To avoid making mistakes. I think I feel too much guilt. To find more leisure time. I don't know what I want from life. To earn more money. I want people to leave me alone. My greatest problem is women. The last one, spoken by a real estate agent, made everyone laugh, but by mutual consent, we chose to discuss the fourth problem. I don't know what I want from life. How can you know what you want? Happily, the problem solves itself as you continue with psycho-pictography. How come? Because all your wants and desires and wishes and ambitions are based on the way you think. But as you learn to think differently, from a high level of understanding, your desires change. They become more mature and realistic. But this does not mean that they give you less satisfaction. Rather, they are far more pleasurable. Why? Because they now serve your best interests, not your ego-centered interests. I see that perfectly, commented a woman down front. I used to agonize over my ambition to be a famous singer. That served my ego interest, but not my best interest. Now I'm content to sing whenever invited, but I'm no longer offended whenever I'm not asked. Imagine yourself surrounded by a crowd of people. A dozen voices shout at once, telling you what you want. They insist that you want fame, fortune, power, and so on. You spin around, believing each voice in turn. No wonder you're bewildered. But you get tired of all the shouting, so you slowly walk away. The voices become fainter and fainter. Finally, for the first time in your life, you hear yourself. And now, great day, this inner voice tells you what you really want from life. Now, let me ask you a question. Now that you can hear your inner voice, what does it tell you that you want? How not thinking helps. Next, I want to give you a startling technique for handling any kind of crisis. It may be entirely new to you. Its value cannot be overestimated. The next time you run into a crisis, don't be afraid not to think about it. Don't let your thoughts chase around in circles in a frantic attempt to catch an answer. This is an extremely profound idea, so let's explore it together carefully. A problem existing on the level of conditioned thinking cannot be solved by conditioned thinking. A problem cannot be solved on its own level. It cannot be done any more than a man can lift himself by pulling upward on his legs. Something higher, something outside himself, must be contacted. That something is awareness. Awareness does far more than supply a temporary answer to a crisis. It dissolves it once and for all. A business acquaintance of mine was worried whether or not he should buy a certain piece of property. He became aware of his real motive for wanting it. It would please his vanity. Since that wasn't a practical reason, he didn't buy. His self-awareness solved his problem and possibly saved him from financial loss. Here is what we must do. We must get our usual conditioned, limited thoughts out of the way. We must become mentally silent. That silence leaves room for the voice of wisdom from within. Nothing is more practical in everyday affairs than this inner voice. By refusing to chase around mentally, you gradually weaken the power of useless thoughts. False ideas can be compared with a huge fan whirling at furious speed. It blows out a destructive gale, but if you don't empower that wheel, it slows down, losing its destructive force. So don't be afraid to not think about a difficulty. It is really strange the fear people have of not thinking. They are hypnotized by a problem. People get anxious when urged to abandon their habitual thought processes. They assume there is nothing better, but there is. There is awareness. See Chapter 10 for more details on the difference between thought and awareness. This kind of not thinking is not an evasion of the difficulty, but a receptivity to a new way of seeing it. You can, if you like, consider awareness as a higher form of thinking. What superiority! It is like an invisible rope overhead. You can reach up and swing over every crisis. Instead of colliding with daily events, You swing easily over them. Nothing need bother you. A magazine article tells about Baron Manfred von Richthofen, the German air act of World War I. As commander of the famous flying circus, he instructed his pilots, "Keep your head and eyes moving around. Be awake to everything. You must never be caught unaware. This does not mean you should be afraid. It means you should be alert. That is how to have a safe flight." That is a good parallel to how we must fly. We need not be anxious about anything, but we must be alert to everything. Alert to what? To opportunities for clearing our lives of everything bothersome. If we take these daily opportunities, we can uplift ourselves before our very eyes. For instance, alertness toward our reactions is of rich profit. Let's see how it cleared the air for Ralph E. Ralph occupied a desk in a large insurance office. He described his situation. "I'd give anything to break the string of disturbances down at the office. You know what I mean. Someone demands a certain report right now. Someone else drops by to ask why I handled a matter the way I did. To top it all, the company restaurant is out of my favourite dessert." Ralph laughed. "I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I just wonder why I have to put up with one bother after another." "You really don't." "How come?" "I can't change these outer events. You can stop reacting to them the way you do. You may not grasp it as yet, but the events themselves don't bother you. It's your own way of reacting. Try to be aware of how you take things. See that the bother is in you, not in the incident. This is a major secret for establishing permanent peace of mind. Work with one little annoyance at a time. Try not to react with your usual annoyance. How to use mental magic. When you understand your mind, you understand everything. Suppose you hand binoculars to a small child without explaining their use. He might try to chew them or pound them on the floor. Now, binoculars are quite capable of visual magic, but only when used properly. If the child doesn't understand their use, he cannot enjoy their visual magic. But when someone explains the correct function of those binoculars, the child places them to his eyes. He then enjoys a wonderful new world, superbly unlike anything he had ever seen before. It is that way with the human mind. There is nothing wrong with human affairs that mental understanding cannot correct, but people don't believe this. They don't see it. They think that they must change the exterior world. They never suspect that they must use their minds properly. They must start seeing the world in a different way. As we see the world with this magical mental vision, it changes before our eyes. This change is very practical and delightful. Every area of external living takes on a bright new look. Because you are different, everything else is different. As examples, you will 1. Make accurate decisions. 2. Be alert to opportunities. 3. Handle people skillfully. 4. Not waste emotional energy. 5. Make maximum use of time. 6. Think clearly and accurately. 7. Have natural enthusiasm. 8. Enjoy business enterprises. 9. Never be gloomy. 10. Build overall efficiency. Every man is a mental magician. By the dramatic act of changing his mind, he changes his exterior world. It is not necessary that you believe this to be true, but it is necessary that you practice the act. Then you will see what a mental magician you actually are. How Harry conquered depression. One evening after a meeting, we were seated around with refreshments. Someone asked Harry C., a successful businessman, "With all your busy financial affairs, how come you never miss a meeting?" He gestured and said, "I can't afford to miss. I haven't the slightest intention of going back to that stupid depression I used to know." He added, "It's no great problem for people to earn enough money for a comfortable living, but what a problem to enjoy their money-making activities. What's a sense of knocking yourself out for 8 hours a day just for a short evening of relaxation? Why not enjoy yourself all day long?" Everyone in the room was impressed by that bit of wisdom. It reminded me of a question Harry had asked during another meeting. "Why do you speak so often about negative emotions?" Because there is a way out of every negative habit of emotion. That is why we're here, to find the way out. What about depression? What is the way out? Whenever you feel depressed, don't identify with the state. Let me explain. Whenever depression floods in, don't automatically assume that you are the depression. Do not say, "I am depressed." This harmfully identifies you with the state. That is, you and the state are so close together that you can't observe it in yourself. Instead, separate yourself from the feeling of depression. See it as something entirely apart from yourself. See it as a wind passing through you but not stopping. That breaks the identification, and it breaks the totally needless habit of depression. Only the false self is depressed, never the true self. You, the reader, can experiment with this for yourself. Don't think that you and your depression are the same thing. You are not your depression any more than you are the wind you feel on a wintry day. Overcoming feelings of helplessness. One of the most painful emotions a human being can experience is that of helplessness. As a further complication, helplessness creates pressure that explodes outwardly with other negative emotions, such as hostility and accusation. So by solving the problem of helplessness, we automatically erase other negativities that spring from it. The counterattack to helplessness is a glimpse of your true self, which is all-powerful. Your true self is the very truth itself. Paracelsus, the wise Swiss philosopher, points out, each man has all the wisdom of the world in himself. Even the slightest perception of higher powers within will energize a man with fresh courage. A lumber company down in Guatemala had set up a jungle camp for the purpose of cutting rare wood. They were far away from civilization. Consequently, it was an expensive project that had to proceed efficiently. But suddenly, while cutting timber, the saws stopped. Workmen stood around helplessly. A frantic message was dispatched to their power plant some distance away. "Send power." The reply came back, "Check connection." They investigated the cable and found the source of their helplessness, a loose connection. You thrill a man when you tell him that he really has all the power he needs for a victorious life. A statement like that arouses the true self that knows it to be an absolute fact. But a man must persist beyond this first thrill. He cannot coast upon it. He must continue to nourish the source of that genuine thrill. He must enthusiastically want to know more of it. It would do those jungle workers no good merely to thrill at glimpsing the power plant in the distance. A firm connection was necessary. Likewise, when you make a firm connection with the only source of genuine power, your true self, feelings of helplessness vanish forever. Always take the viewpoint that any good idea may have deeper significance than it first appears to have. The idea of a firm connection with your true self is a good place to start. Are you taking these ideas home? Imagine yourself shopping in a large modern market. First, you place a few staple items in your shopping cart, like milk and bread. The idea of fresh fruit appeals, so you add some apples and peaches. Because you like your food spicy, some cinnamon and ginger pop into the cart. Finally, you think you'd like something sweet, so you add a chocolate cake. Your shopping cart is now loaded with good things. You wheel it to the checker, pay your money, and prepare to take it home. At this point, suppose you do an incredible thing. Suppose you simply walk out of the market without taking your groceries. Suppose you don't take them home. You wouldn't dream of such an act, of course. After spending both your time and money, you would think it fantastic not to bring home the groceries. You would carry them home to be enjoyed. As you cover the principles of these pages, let that picture impress you. These principles and truths and techniques are for your health and enjoyment. You need them. Not only that, but you have paid for them with your careful examination. Do not leave these ideas in the book. Take them home. That is, apply them in your everyday experience. That is where they nourish you. Just as groceries must be taken home, so must these ideas be taken into your mental home. Take the dynamic truth that no one can hurt or insult you unless you unknowingly grant them the power to insult. Suppose you have taken this idea home. In this case, you realize that only the false self, with its touchy vanity, gets insulted. Your insight causes that useless self to disappear, so insults and criticisms vanish into thin air. What a fantastically free life awaits the man or woman who carries home this truth or any other. Have you done so? Well, why not? Don't leave it in the print of these pages. It is yours. You have paid. Take it home to enjoy. Summary of vital truths. 1. Do not permit a crisis to goad you into impulsive actions. Think calmly and wisely. 2. You have a right to live your own life as long as it harms neither yourself nor others. 3. Your first duty is toward your own inner development. 4. It is entirely possible for you to live unburdened by one crisis after another. 5. Use the startling technique of not thinking. Replace habitual thought by new awareness. 6. Remember how Ralph E. cleared a crisis from his daily affairs. 7. Review the list of 10 benefits arising from your uplifted vision. 8. Try to see depression as a passing feeling. Do not see it as a permanent part of yourself. 9. Your true self can meet and dissolve every crisis. 10. Take all these ideas into your mental home. They become your willing servants.